The Treaty of Versailles and Woodrow Wilson's work there, not just as the President of the United States, but as an international leader, really is the crowning achievement of his career as a political leader. It's really his magnum opus. It also really is kind of the beginning of the United States becoming a type of world's policeman, or the United States becoming a major player in international politics that really happens at the end of World War I and will continue right on to the present day. What's curious about Wilson's 14 points is they were not necessarily terribly popular at the time. In fact, he was criticized for having 4 more points than God does, in a reference to the 10 Commandments. But the point is this, Wilson's 14 points, which dramatically remade the map of Europe and the Middle East, which dramatically changed the way that things had been done for the previous several centuries, were strangely and largely accepted by the Germans, who shared Wilson's vision of a new world order, who were already had a similar worldview to him in many ways because they'd already accepted many of the ideas of the Enlightenment, and they had already accepted many of the ideas, for example, of higher criticism, something we talked about in a previous lesson as well. Of course, Wilson's 14 points were designed to be the once and for all peace treaty, the once and for all creation of world peace. It's really from this time forward that people really pursue this concept of world peace as if it was possible in a fallen world. You don't really see this as a tradition in Christianity, not because Christians don't care about peace, not because Christians don't have a vision of world peace, but because Christians do not have the disillusionment that world peace is something that is humanly possible. Christians have a realistic vision of what evil is, not just the evil of others, but the evil of themselves, which is why Christian influenced government has always seen the need for checks and balances, which has always seen the need to somehow stop the corruption of its own leaders, because it sees the own darkness of its own heart. That's really at the heart of all Christian visions of political theory, at least all proper ones, I would argue. Still, Wilson's 14 points are worth looking at because they largely help to shape the Europe and the Middle East to come. They were designed, as I mentioned to you, to prevent all future wars. They were designed to satisfy as many of the nations as possible, but they were ultimately designed to favor the strengths and the interest of the Allies. In other words, what came out of the Treaty of Versailles and what came out of the 14 points was it seemed like the Allies had actually won World War I. And of course, this is the debate that Niall Ferguson is able to make and that other historians have made, is that World War I was kind of fought to a draw. It was kind of fought to a stalemate. And it was only after the war that the Allies kind of said, well, we won and here are our demands. And those demands were ultimately accepted. Now, those demands, as I mentioned to you multiple times, would be one of the direct causes of the Second World War. They would also be some of the direct causes of future wars. For it was out of the Treaty of Versailles that maybe some nations suddenly saw themselves as being restored or found as new nationalistic ideals, but there were also certain nations that were lumped together with other peoples. For example, the Kurds were lumped with both Sunni and Shia Muslims in one nation called Iraq. For example, countries or peoples such as the Bosnians, the Croatians, and the Serbs, for example, were all lumped together in the country of Yugoslavia. As for the Vietnamese, who desperately wanted their own independence, led by their leader Ho Chi Minh, who actually attended the Versailles Conference, they were completely denied any kind of freedom because it was a French-held colony. In other words, I've just mentioned to you the conflicts that would become the Vietnam War, the 2 Gulf Wars, and the various wars in the Balkans in the late 20th century. All of those have direct roots in the Treaty of Versailles. We can't ignore them. The Treaty of Versailles and all of its short-sightedness actually helped guarantee just about all of the future conflicts involving European and Middle Eastern powers in the 20th century and beyond, things that we are still dealing with.